If you've listened to Australian Formula One podcasting, you will know this man's obsession with Melbourne sound effects. I certainly love it. Lots of people love it. And if you're listening to this podcast, you've likely listened to Box of Neutrals. We've had Michael Aminato on, and it's not his turn because in this episode of the Lakeside Drive F1 podcast, I chat with Rob James. And I'm joined legitimately by my friend and yours, because he is my friend. We'd probably speak more than the rest of the Lakeside Drive crew and I speak. Rob James.
I think I've spoken to you more than I have Peter McGinley. It's bizarre. But that's not for contractual reasons, obviously. It's just he's just very hard man to get hold off being those broadcast towers ain't going to service themselves. Put it that way.
Oh, mate, it's so good to have you on. It's been many years since we spoke to who I call him Lamo, which I think I'm the only person to, which is Michael. And there's so much that's happened since that time. And what I wanted to do is just bring you out from that, because you're very good at your sound effects, specifically Melbourne-based Australiana sound effects. And have a little bit of a chat about Rob, because not many people know a lot about you. For good or for bad reasons. So let's go right back to the beginning, mate. Let's go back to young Rob. Take us from university. What were you doing and how did this trajectory sort of start?
So I often joke this at the job I currently work at, because about half of us are actually not qualified for our jobs. And so I have a Bachelor of Creative Arts, graphic design with distinction in animation, as a minor in animation as well. And I then worked for like a year. I genuinely didn't know what a good minimum wage was, so I thought $32,000 was fine. I thought, gee, it's more than handing out newspapers. Like $20 an hour in 2000. This is 2008, 2010 money we're talking as well. So. It's a little bit different. Times were different back then.
Real dollar dues, it's not like now.
$10 a block like it is now. Or whatever it is in 10, 20 years' time when you're rewatching this podcast or vodcast.
Yeah.
And then I did that, but then I decided to venture in, and I don't know why, but I'm glad I did, into community radio, which is where ultimately I met Lamio. That was his nickname. At the community station, Sin FM in Melbourne. Michael's not really a nickname kind of guy. I just call him Michael because he's a sensible kind of fellow, So I've only ever referred to him as Michael. But anyway, he also had the unfortunate nickname, and again, this predates the 2010 era. He had the unfortunate nickname Lemon Party. Don't Google it. Which I respectfully did not call him that, and therefore we became kindred spirits because I afforded him the dignity of his actual name. And then in that time, I ultimately I joined that community station because I'd heard about it. I wanted to get involved, just for the social aspect and things like that. Not necessarily having an interest in broadcasting. In fact, I was shitting bricks at the thought of talking in front of a microphone and stuff like that. So my role was initially I was like, I ain't talking. I just want to press buttons. And so I did a show with a couple of blokes, which is the classic Hamish and Andy +1 sort of formula that everyone at that time walked into. And I played the sound effects. That's where the sound effects came from. And then I did a show on a Friday afternoon. And then Michael did a show with one of his mates from school as well but he did that on a Monday afternoon. And his friend enjoyed the sound effects that I had, and we sort of met each other along the way that we, all the shows got together and had a meet and greet. And his other mate, also called Michael, he was like, "Oh, mate, I love the sound effects or whatever." And I'm like, yeah, no worries. I'll burn you a CD. It sounds ridiculous in this day and age. I literally had sound effects on a CD. I had the tracks, and so you'd have to scroll through. You could scroll through it pretty quick. And then I gave him like, I don't know, it was like 15 sound effects, like a donkey noise and a prize music and ding dings and wah wah wahs and shit like that. And then then Michael's mate, Michael, it gets very confusing. Bear with me. Then decides to use my sound effects, which attracts the ire of Lamio. And then eventually Lamio and I started talking. And then we both found out that we had I loved F1 at this point. I was like knee deep into watching it and whatever, fresh out of high school or whatever, so I could watch it late at night without a care in the world. Whereas interestingly, Lamio had actually fallen sort of out of love with F1 by this point. Was a classic Ferrari fan as a kid and whatever, and used to watch it. I think he would still go to the race. I think his family would go get tickets and yeah, because I had grandstand passes, because I went with them a couple of times as well. And so he had a casual interest in it. But then he never really knew anyone else that really liked it. And so then we met. We both really liked F1. He started to really get into it again, obviously from the podcast point of view. And it was actually, like, if you remember 2010, it was a ripper season. So it was a perfect time to, I guess, do an F1 podcast, of which I might note we still maintain the fact, I reckon we were one of the early F1 podcasts in the world.
Probably the F1 podcast.
Genuinely. Oh, definitely
No one
not
else
in Australia, because our tagline used to be, it was Box of Neutrals, Australia's only Formula One radio show to the best of our knowledge. That was the tagline.
Why don't you still got that? That's still true, probably.
No, because there isn't. Well, because now we're not a radio show, so yeah, but, yeah.
Not with that attitude.
Just fast forward a few years, the ABC gave us the arse, and then that was that. And
we'll get to that. We'll get to the ABC and we'll get to Red Simons at some point in the future. So how do you then form that? So you've gone to the Grand Prix a couple of times. Michael's loved 2007. You've loved 2009, 10 because Jensen, and of course it got exciting. It does come and go, listeners. Yes, this year has not been so good, and 21 was very exciting, but 2009 and 10 were also very good. So how do you then sort of get together after Michael and then Rob plus Hamish and Andy equivalents?
Well, funnily enough, because with the sound effects and whatever, and the other show that I was doing, it was also seasonal too. So you did it in like, so let's say the stupid Hamish and Andy-esque show that I did was like through summer, and then through autumn and winter. Michael and I decided to basically pilot the show because I guess with my background, I didn't even have a background. I was self-taught. I just enjoyed editing, and I was starting to get into it just for fun, to be honest. And so, gathering sound effects and just mixing things, and I used to like radio as a medium, and so I think, again, not that I plan to get into it, I just did it for fun. I did it for fun. And so I had pretty high standards for production. And Michael is a bit of a stickler for that as well. So kind of perfectionists in some areas. And of course, being, 20, 21, 22, we had nothing better to do and all the time in the world. So we could do it back then. And it's interesting. We listened back. And so Michael and I still do the podcast, but I still reckon that 2010 to 2014, I want to say, era, like we'll go through sound effects and we'll be like, bloody hell, this was actually pretty well produced. Like there's layers of audio, there's left and right channels going, there's, filters and whatever. Whereas now, not that I don't give a shit, but, priorities in life change a little bit, and you can't put in the same amount of hours into something that's basically for free. Like even when, some of the ABC stuff, like, I would still do that. I still did all the show media. So I did like the intro and out. I do like the things in between, because the ABC made us an intro, and then not that we weren't told we couldn't make our own, but I didn't want to offend Andy, the audio producer, who was a lovely fellow. And so, yeah, we still did a lot of things ourselves. And we still do a lot of things ourselves, but it's just, doing dumb sketches with I'm Peter McGinley. We would do like dumb sort of sketches about Peter. And the formula was great because Michael was basically the anchor. I was just talking shit. And then Peter was just like, I would just flick him at the back of the head and annoy him, and therefore we would just create gold. It was akin to cyberbullying, but nevertheless, we all knew what the formula was, and it worked. And it was great. And to be honest, that time was like, I do miss not having Peter. He's not dead, don't worry. He's just working a lot. He's contractually not allowed to appear on podcasts as well. That's a true story. Yeah. But so I do miss that because it's what made the show work. But as Michael and I have gotten older, we've kind of matured a little bit, but still kept a little bit of our ways. And it's easier to do now because we're a bit older and wiser. We know our way around the sport. Michael's a bit more well-credentialed, especially. We're slightly less juvenile in our behaviour because it gets a bit sad and pathetic if we're still doing undergraduate humour in our 30s. But yeah, it's but Peter back then, like, we would just make dumb sketches about him and involve him with F1. And Peter knew nothing about F1. He was literally there just to play the music, play the sound effects and whatever. But it was perfect because he knew nothing about F1. We'd be nattering on about, Kurz, what a piece of shit that is. And Peter would go, what's Kurz? And so then we'd explain it. And then because obviously we're on a community radio station as well, there'd be people that'd be listening and they've never heard of F1. This is long before Drive to Survive. This is while F1 was big, but not USA big, like it is now. So it was such a different time back then, and it wasn't that it was worse. It was just different back then, and yeah, it was. It's funny. I often think that like we were ahead of our time, and we were both in the right place, right time, but also the right place, wrong time. If that makes sense. I reckon if we were the same age we were then, but now, life would be a bit different.
In terms of, you guys have been producing podcasts for a long time. In fact, it's probably coming up to 10, 12 years worth of Box and Neutrals. What will next year be?
I think it's, the year.
No, as in like how long? What season will it be? Season 13? Season 14?
The 2010 season of season 0, because that was our pilot season. Because it was only available on podcasts back then. Because our thing was like we divvied up the seasons in terms of the radio show. So and that goes to show how much podcasts have changed, where podcasts are very much the series. It's not like the extra bonus feature anymore. It's not just a bit of, it's a primary source now for information and whatever. So for us, the 2010 season was season 0, and then it was really season 2011 was the actual radio show season, if that makes sense. So if we go off that, that would be, so I'm doing the maths. I'm horrendous with me.
So it'll be your 13th season, right? If my maths is correct. Going into 2024 will be your 13th season of Box and Neutrals.
Yeah, it should be -1 because season 10 would have been 2020. 1, 2, 3. No, hang on, that doesn't make sense. Maybe it's 2014. Doesn't matter. Let's go season a long time ago. Yeah, over a decade
is the answer. I asked Michael this yesterday too, and he also couldn't remember how long it was. So that show, if you can't remember, you've been doing it a long time. I think that probably just
sums up where we're at with it. It's not that we don't care or we're tired. It's at a level where it is just so manageable. It is like flying a plane on autopilot. Like we're literally. There are episodes where we don't have notes prepared. Michael's like, I'm sorry, I'm too busy. And I'm like, that's cool, whatever. We'll just riff, because I think Michael and I know each other so well, and we've done it for so long that it's easy. Whereas I think, I've done it before, and it's affected my career as well because I'm so used to just knowing what to do. And it's just like, we'll just talk through it. And then some people just freak out and go, oh, fuck, I need dot points, I need a structure, I need a rundown, I need this, that, and the other. Whereas I'm just used to winging it. It's like basically it's like we've done Curb Your Enthusiasm for 13 years. Here's a set of dot points. You make up the dialogue. You just say something and just make it organic. Whereas, others that I've worked with are like, I need a script. I need this and that. And which is interesting. Not that it's a good, bad, or wrong or indifferent or anything. It's just a different way of doing it that I just haven't been used to. And it gives me a different, set of skills that I can just, I have done it before where not that I'm not proud to admit it. I am proud to admit it because I'm saying it right now. But there are times where, so like on SEN, for example, I'd get called up from like friends of a friend saying, "Oh, hey, can we talk about what's a good example? The Brazilian Grand Prix, for example." I'm like, "Yeah, sure, no worries. I watched it last night." And I've literally, I have gone through live radio interviews, basically going, yeah, first, second, third, fourth, who scored 10th, who retired, I'll wing it from here. And I'd be able to do that. But that also comes with also doing it for so long and knowing the sport that I can actually bullshit my way through it.
Yep.
I've never been wrong. Let's just put it that way. So, yes.
I never called
exactly.
out. Yeah, I think when you do it long enough and you absorb so much information and random tidbits, if they ask you a very general question, which most radio hosts who are looking for information about, F1 to fill a 10, 15-minute segment, they'll ask a broad question and they don't care where you take it. So long as you fill the time and it sounds intelligent, they're absolutely fine. Now, you mentioned ABC. Let's go back to that. So you've put the podcast together. You've called it Box of Neutrals, which is a great name for it. And you were very glad when Martin Brundle then set it on a live broadcast somewhere so you could grab that audio for your intro. How did you turn it into being on the ABC?
I'll give a brief story on the Box of Neutrals name and then I'll get into that. But Michael and I also went to the same uni. And so we would basically, when we were coming up with the show name, we both just said, let's just come up with like 10, 20 names each. And I don't know where Box of Neutrals came from, but I either heard it or Googled it or something. I can't remember, but I basically jotted all these names down. And all the names were pretty shit, like, Lakeside Drive and the warm-up lap and, Pit
stop.
Yeah.
WTF1, the race, Autosport.
Yeah,
I know that was taken.
The reserve drivers, all those shit names. Dirtfish, the Rusty's Garage. You Cannot Be Serious. The Sounding Board.
Car Sales.
Triple M's Rush Hour with JV and Billy. The Neil Mitchell Show, anyway. And so I came up and I'm shattered that I can't find it. And I've
was F1 360 part of the names that you put together at that
would
point?
have been a TV show.
Yeah.
But
not wrong.
But I actually came up with it and I can't for the life of me find the notebook that it was in because it was all these names and it was not for the fact to gloat that I came up with the name, but I just want to know what the others on the shortlist were. And that stuck with Michael. Michael really liked it. And he went, oh, you know what? I don't mind that. And so I think we made that as the pilot prototype name and we never changed it. So that was that. But then, fast forward, we did the Sin FM stuff on community radio for another 10, 11, 12, so another 4 years. Hang on, 10, 11. So we did it for about 3 years. We were known for like our egregious level of production. We started filming stunts and it was just like, it was classic because it was on radio. We could afford to do stupid shit. And we once hired a. This was the great thing about Oxford. It was an F1. This is the thing people liked about it, and the common feedback we had was, I know nothing about F1, but I enjoy listening to your show, and that was the best feedback that we could ever get, because in between talking about, is Pirelli made too hard of a tire for F1? In walks in a male stripper to basically dance on Peter McGinley's table to annoy him. I literally, a bunch of us got pissed one night and said, someone said, why don't you get a stripper to come in and annoy Peter? And I said, no, a female stripper would be tasteless and tacky and sexist and derogatory. So let's bring in a male stripper. And so we paid with our own money. And it's funny because you would think I would be the one that would be all for it. I actually took the video down off our YouTube channel because I thought it was distasteful, and I thought it would jeopardize our chances of going to a mainstream broadcaster like the ABC. And Michael was like, "Nah, keep it. It's funny." And I'm like I can't do it. But then eventually I did take it down. I don't think he knows that I took it down, but but again, it's something that I would not do now because it's stupid. Like it's wrong. You get cancelled.
This is the time that like Tropic Thunder was being released, and everyone was okay with that. So things have changed.
It was, not to go old Daryl Summers, but it was, you could do a lot more back then. But it was like, we just do stupid stuff like that, and so that was the great bit of feedback. That wasn't the reason why we got to the ABC, mind you, as well. But in that time, it was because Michael and I then did a radio course together at Swinburne. Rest in peace, the great graduate diploma of commercial radio at Swinburne. Such fine graduates as Fifi Box. I forget who the other ones were, but other people in the industry of note went through that course, and Michael Abernado and Rob James did as well. So
there you go.
But yeah, we did that in its final year in 2012, and in that time, Michael became a panel operator at SEN through a friend of a friend. The stories, man, the stories. And then I became bizarrely a street team member, and then a panel operator, then an overnights announcer at Nova in Melbourne.
What?
Do you not know this?
Oh. No. Overnight announcer on Nova?
Yes. So it was the great hierarchy of basically shit kickers graduating to become less of a shit kicker. So like the guy that did the overnight, well, actually no, to be fair, I was the fill-in shit kicker, because the guy that was mad enough to sign up for mid-dawns on Friday nights and Saturday nights and Sunday nights, he fell ill, and I was panel operating at the time, so I knew my way around the desk and whatever, and I could panel. Industry term for pressing the buttons and playing the music and whatever, but I didn't do the talking. Yep. But obviously I'd done the course and whatever, and they knew that I could do it, but it was the perfect practice ground where you could stuff up on a commercial radio station. So me back then, not knowing, I don't know shit about music back then either. But it was a great era. Like every time Avicii level, it was the Avicii Levels era as well. So like that studio, I'd just turn it up. I still have, apart from my current job at the moment, I still like that job was the best job in the world. It actually genuinely was. It was, I'd be guaranteed 4 hours pay for playing the best of Fits in Whipper at 6 o'clock at night after uni. And then occasionally do like the Saturday night, like pre-recorded show and whatever. But then I had to do a live show as well. And that was like another thrill as well. But it was a tough job. Like and this is the thing about radio. I'd say this to people now, like, if you wanted, there's people that I know now, and I've said it to someone recently, I said, like, you would love radio, but you would have loved it 10 years ago. Now it's a harder game. There's obviously like when you got Kyle and Jackie O doing what they're doing still, coming into Melbourne and whatever. They're great broadcasters, don't get me wrong, but it's a worrying trend in the industry where everything's a lot smaller. People are doing it for cheaper. Anyway, but that's for box of transmitters. My radio industry podcast. Yes, but anyway, so Michael and I both had radio experience. Peter McGinley was still working at Coles. He was so shitty. He was so jealous. And at one point he was genuinely upset that that Michael and I both had jobs in radio, granted entry level, and Peter was still managing. He was like the manager at Coles in southeast Melbourne. I won't name the store because the store had the unfortunate reputation of being the most dangerous Coles in all of Melbourne.
Oh.
It had a silent alarm that went directly to the police station up the road.
Good.
But bizarrely, in the 10 years Peter McGinley worked there, he was never present for a robbery. So,
well, if you would like to call Crime Stoppers on our behalf, you now know how the information for the string robberies in Melbourne's southeast Coles.
So, but yeah, anyway, Peter was flat about that, and then I counselled him on some advice, and I jokingly said, "I'll become your manager." And I demand restitution of some of your salary to me for a finder's fee, basically. And then I got him like a thing with 3AW just to fill it, just to do some like work experience. And then he actually got a job at SEN, bizarrely, becoming the breakfast show's panel operator and the morning show's panel operator. And then bizarrely, I actually ended up at SEN as their digital manager, so like an off-air role. I lasted 5 months, but I had a Godfather offer I couldn't refuse. And I recommended Peter for that job. And a few iterations later, he's now like genuinely one of the most senior, important people in the business. He's like head of broadcast operations or something. So he basically, will service the transmitter site. He will set up radio studios. He will set up servers and whatever, which is like a perfect job for him. Like he's such a nerd. He loves it. But unfortunately with that means his Box of Neutrals time, I don't want to say he's come to an end because he's always welcome. He's always welcome back, and we reference him like every week anyway. So it's not he doesn't want to do it or we don't want him to do it. He just doesn't have time, and he's also just not allowed. Because SEN were very good to him and to me as well, to let him do the podcast when we were at the ABC. Sorry, I haven't got to the bit. I'm working backwards here.
We'll get there.
But basically, we were allowed to do it. But Michael I sent a demo to someone at the network currently known as SCA, and they wanted us to do a breakfast radio show in bumblefuck nowhere. And I'm like, I'm not keen on that. And then, but at the same time, Michael sent something, and I don't know how, but he sent it to someone at ABC Sport. The guy replied. His actual reply was genuinely, "I'm Mark Webber's cousin. Let's talk." And then Michael was all confused because he's just like, I remember he called me and he said, we're both like, it could not have been that easy because he literally said, we'll do it. Well, come on board, come and do your show. So, okay, this is all right. And at the time, I don't know if it's still around today, but there was a podcast called Test Match Sofa, and that was the format I think the ABC wanted us to do, which was their format was it was a couple of mates who would basically phantom commentate live coverage of sport without obviously being the rights holder. Now, of course, they would do this whilst viewing the screen, but they didn't play the feed, obviously. So you'd circumvent the rights by doing that. But it's a little bit sneaky. But and we were particularly cognizant that it was very sneaky. We were probably a little bit surprised at how brazen the ABC were to let us or want us to do this kind of format. And so we explained basically like we couldn't, and they understood that we weren't allowed to commentate the race, and it was a good idea. And their idea was it was basically companion radio while people watched F1. So you could watch the coverage as it was then on Channel 10. And then, but yeah, we were around for the Fox Sports, the early Fox Sports years in 20, whatever it was. And we would do like interviews, we'd preview the race and stuff like that. And probably that was the peak of our production values because we would do we'd take it incredibly seriously. Like I remember having a blow up because the guy in the master control room stuffed up and we weren't on air. And so I had a full, I went nuts, annoyed at that this was occurring because we were such perfectionists. We thought, oh, how amateur is this and whatever. A bit of an overreaction from me, but it was, but yeah, we were taking it pretty seriously by then, and it was good. Like we'd preview the race an hour before, then the race would start, and then we'd basically not phantom commentate the first hour of a Grand Prix, but we would basically, we would do longer form chats about topics while the race was on in the background. We'd probably provide updates in terms of like, after lap 10. Valtteri Bottas is, in a remarkable position in the Williams, gunning for a podium, and stuff like that. So yeah, it was interesting, and it was good. They would let us. So we did that live show on a Sunday. They would then let us do our weekly podcast as well, which would then air on ABC Grandstand on their digital station. And so yeah, life was good until two new program directors later came in and literally said, we're winding you guys up because we're now only focusing on the big four sports being AFL, NRL, cricket, and to a lesser extent the A-League. So we missed Drive to Survive by that much, and had that been around in 20, well, I don't know, it was 17 or 18 or I can't remember. It was
so not far.
Yeah, no, not far.
Really not that far.
And we not that we really made that much money from it. We actually didn't even legally have a contract as well. It was literally it was the most handshake agreement you could ever hope for, and it was good because they gave us a bit of carte blanche in terms of what we could do as long as we didn't break the law. It started to get loose towards the end because we weren't getting air checked. I remember we had a new program director come in, and he was ex-Nova as well, and so he was commercial radio focused and whatever, and he was good at that stuff, and he liked F1 as well, so it was like perfect. He's just like, yeah, I want to listen to you guys and give you an air check and this and that, and we weren't used to that for the first couple of years, and then he gave us an air check once, and then he got incredibly busy. Because that role was like cooked. It was basically three people as one. Like he was having to put up with where's Jared Waitley commentating AFL from today to organising OB links and it was a lot of work for the content director to do. So he couldn't give us the time that I guess he wanted to give us to do that, and then he went sideways into another role, and then they got another program director come in, and he decided, I don't even know who it was. I don't even know the guy. All I know is he called Michael and said, we don't need you anymore, even though, which is hilarious. Like it literally cost them, I reckon what is it? How much is it out of your tax dollars that funds the ABC? Like the 5 cents that it is? I reckon it was like 0.02 of that went into box of neutrals. So yeah, I don't know. But anyway, we went in. But at that time, if it was 5 years before, we'd be flat as a tack. But at that time, podcasts were starting to become more independent and whatever. And so we're like, I remember Michael called me up. He said, it's over. And I went, oh, what do you mean? He's like, oh, ABC, they don't want us next year. They said, don't come back. And I'm like, huh. Oh, what do you want to do? Because we've always been like, I genuinely don't know when we'll stop doing the podcast because Peter's like jumped off the plank reluctantly, but I still don't mind doing it. Michael clearly doesn't mind doing it, and so it's just, like, and I don't know, like it's because it's so easy to do. It was just this great transition of it became so effortless that we didn't really care that it wasn't on the radio anymore. If anything, it was a blessing because it meant less work. So, and then we could just have fun with it. So it went from, in the space of, I don't know, 10 years, it went from being a hobby to like, we're going to take this seriously hobby to a well-credentialed side hustle to then being a hobby again with a little bit of pocket money along the way. So, yeah, I genuinely don't know when we'll stop. So, yeah, don't know.
It's effectively its own life form now, the
a little
podcast.
bit.
And when you build an audience in the way that you guys have done over such a long time, and also being from well before Drive to Survive, a lot of people found you who, you know, wanted a community of F1 people to talk to. And as you both had experienced, there's not that many, like if you're in a friendship group, there's not that many people who used to love F1.
Yeah.
We're all similar age. So, you know, like early 30s. So back sort of 2010, 2011, like 2021, 22, trying to talk about F1 with anyone was almost impossible in trying to say how exciting it was that Jenson Button was able to win after all of the issues with Honda going into Brawn. And people are like, what? Who? I don't understand. Like, it's changed so much since then. But you've built this big thing. At the peak of the time in ABC, did you ever have any kind of aspirations to be international or go on a broadcast with Channel 10 or then Fox, or even, you know, working with F1 directly as either by yourself or as a group?
Yeah, there was a little bit of a dream of like, what else could we do? Because we always thought that, you know, we could just do it better than everyone else because we were the only different product out there. We weren't the same sort of, you know, I guess offering in the F1 world back then. It was a very different time back then in comparison to now. There's so many other people that have, you know, boomed exponentially, courtesy of Drive to Survive, courtesy of F1 expanding a digital offering and stuff like that. So, but, you know, to be honest, like, you know, we were just two Aussies just talking shit about F1. We weren't particularly credentialed in how we did it, but, you know, that didn't stop WTF1, did it? So, so I don't know. Like we did actually have a international footprint. I don't know if I can reveal it because it's not how Michael gets his pass anymore. So bizarrely, we knew someone that moved to Thailand. And he was working at a English speaking radio station over there for like expat Aussies and whatever. And he recommended us to do a show. And the newspaper, the radio station was backed by a newspaper in Phuket, the Phuket Times. So we would basically 2 versions of Boxer Neutrals would be produced every week. And this is even while we were at the ABC. So at then Her Majesty's studios, we were producing a commercial radio show for Phuket Live 89.5 FM, which was like it was like an hour show or something, and we would pre-record like on a Saturday morning, but we pre-record it on like a Thursday evening when we used to do the show. So we'd pre-record it into, you know, 4 segments or something like that, because it had, you know, obviously music and ad breaks and whatever. So yeah, we would do that, and then, but we also kept that relationship because it was handy, because it was the only way Michael and I could get F1 media access back in the day. So while we were cutting out, we needed some kind of in somehow. So technically I was the first credentialed Phuket Live 89.5 correspondent at the 2012 Malaysian Grand Prix.
Wow.
It was a whirlwind because I remember we got told we were doing it and the station is organising your passes to go to the Grand Prix. I can't remember if they organised the accommodation but yeah, basically, did they even do the airfares? It was something wild. But anyway, I didn't have my passport by then. And so the Monday immediately after the Australian Grand Prix, because I think it was like a week in between, I'm willing to say. I went to the passport office, got a passport. And it's hilarious because in 2012, I think it was a warm Grand Prix from memory. So we were in the grandstand, we were in the baking sun in the weekend. And this is the funny thing. So we'd go to the Oz Grand Prix. Oh yeah, no, we only had national media accreditation. So we were in the V8 supercars kind of area. So let's go to the grandstand and watch the race.
I don't want to sit next to Thomas Randall.
No. So we would still go to the F1 and watch as fans basically from the grandstand. And then we'd be as our mate who a long-suffering friend of ours was like, oh, you pretend media journalists just eating party pies and sausage rolls in the media centre. And so, we did Australia. Then I got my passport on the Monday, paid the, $700 or whatever it was at the time to get my passport done that week. And then we flew out Friday night.
Oh, my goodness.
And landed in Malaysia, country I'd never been to before. I'd never been overseas before either. So it was my first. So that's why everything was just it was nuts. It was bizarre. And just never experienced that much humidity before. I'd never had Malaysian KFC before. We were in and out. We landed. Because it was the year that Perez, I think, was on the podium, if you recall. I think Alonso won that race in the Ferrari or something. It was red flagged. And so we were cutting it fine because we weren't anticipating a red flag because we had to fly out immediately after the race. So basically, and granted, this is an era before WhatsApp and message. So it was very hard to communicate between us. So I was the only one in the media centre. Michael and Peter were just in the general admission area. And so Michael messages me saying, we need to leave as soon as the checkered flag drops. So I do what I need to do for Box of Neutrals. So I wrote the race report and stuff for the newspaper. It wasn't a completely free junket illegitimately where we just sat and watched the race. We legitimately were like, well, we should do some stories and do some work. And so, we literally grabbed our bags, I bolted out of the media centre and we found a taxi. And, of course, after the race, it's hella expensive. I think it was I don't know, it was 200 ringgit or something, which is $30 at the time, Australian dollars. And it was the most expensive part of our trip thus far.
Wow.
It was I then had one more stint in Malaysia in 2014. And so that was the last time I went there. I think the last time I was there as a credentialed Box of Neutrals person was 2017, I think. I got a pass because I just emailed someone and then I got it. And then that was the last time because then my actual work took over a bit more and therefore I didn't need to do Box of Neutrals anymore, which was handy timing because by then we were doing it for fun again and we took it less seriously and I could actually do my job at that weekend. So anyway, it worked out all right. But I had personal dreams of doing maybe going to F1 and doing stuff like that. I even got as far as applying for a gig over there. I nearly moved at one point to do it. I told Michael, I said, just FYI, I've actually applied for a gig, and I got shortlisted for it. I was ready to go. And so I just said, oh, hey, heads up, this might happen. Obviously it did not eventuate, and I'm glad I didn't, because the way it turned out, my visa would have expired in August of 2020, and I would have done bloody 2 weeks quarantine in Howard Springs at my own expense. So it was a blessing in disguise. It was not obviously not meant to be, but I've it's very impressive. It's weird. Like, working in motorsport, people think that, like, you must like deal with F1 drivers and F1 cars all day. And I'm like, that's still an office job at the end of the day. Like, I went through, I did a tour of the F1 facility in Biggin Hill, and they still have Dell monitors, and they still have a lunchroom and a coffee machine, and the minutiae of an everyday job. It just happens to be one of F1's offshoot offices, and so that was cool. But like, and Michael, I think, I didn't know this, but he also expressed an interest in going overseas at one point, and he also seemingly came to terms with, happy not to do it, because it can be quite tiring, and knowing people in that ecosystem, and knowing other, like, people have described it like you get institutionalized a little bit, like it's hard, and you can see how it happens, because you do, like, imagine doing F1 for even like 3 years on the beat, let alone the people that have been in that paddock for 20. You leave that paddock, you try to get a normal job in the real world. It's no different. You may as well have been in jail. You may as well have like reacquaint yourself with like normal society, lining up for Subway like at 12:10 every other person does in an industrial estate. Like, it's weird. It's weird. And so so like, the desire to go off and, chase my dreams, as it were, like, those days are done, because, like, I'm too old in my eyes. I'm too old to be doing that stuff, but like, I'm okay with it. Like, it's fine. I'm not ungrateful for anything that we experience, or the experiences I have, or the work I do, or whatever. So it would have been nice to have done it, but I'm not upset or losing sleep or having regrets about it either.
I'm curious about the transition from it being a side hustle but well-credentialed back to being fun again, because this is, like, it's tough to put podcasts together. Yeah. We both do it, and sometimes it's really exciting, and you come up with a new podcast idea, and that all sounds great and whatever, but the longer it goes on, sometimes you don't know who you're doing it for. And when you hang out with people like Michael, and you are obviously great mates, and that makes a big difference. Was it hard to bring the joy back to begin with, or did you find, because you'd been doing it for so long and you dropped track on having to adhere to ABC values, you're just able to keep going? Because obviously it has kept going. I imagine your audience numbers are growing year on year, even with thousands of other podcasts starting like ours, to not necessarily, to take, there's only, the audience pie is only so big. So, you lose a little bit, I suppose. Yeah. But because you've been going so long, and you do have a very unique show, like, you're the only F1 podcast I listen to. I don't bother listening to my own thing because I edit it, but I still listen and laugh, and then get to hang out with you in real life. I get to have that 4D experience. Look at me go. But was it hard to find the joy again, or was it always just there?
It's hard to describe. Funnily enough, I think the only frustration I started to have about doing it was genuinely running the Twitter account. So because the schedule started to blow out, and like, the amount of times I'd be like, oh, nah, sorry, I can't hang out. I got to watch the F1 race. I got to bloody tweet. And because we were a 2010 product as well, so Twitter started to explode in that time, and we leveraged Twitter to build an audience, because that's when, when Marta Brundle, David Coulthard, or later years David Croft would reference it, the Twitter feed would explode with, Box of Neutrals, whatever. But then we would do I'd make memes and whatever, and then they would go quote unquote viral. And so I'd spend so much time just trying to replicate the next funny thing that we would do that would start to become hard work. And so, funnily enough, the podcast was never really hard work. We'd pop in after, we'd have to drive to bloody South Bank or whatever after work, and spend an hour doing it, or the ABC computer would shit itself and we'd lose a whole hour's recording. We'd have to start again. Or Michael's overseas, Peter's also overseas. I'm in Melbourne but forgot to record the show and I'm at the pub. I've once recorded the show I have recorded an episode drunk before. I genuinely have. I'm
great. Good for you.
Mildly embarrassed to admit it, but I have done it before.
No, don't be.
And yeah, it was the podcast was actually easy to do. It was genuinely the Twitter account started to grate on me because it's just now it's hard work to do, and now and then having to do it at dumb hours, doing North American races and whatever. It was it's really hard. I'm not a morning person, but but that started to become difficult, and but I was always I felt bad because I think by that stage I stopped editing the podcast. I would do the show media, but I would stop editing. So, because it used to be I would edit, Michael would basically produce it, Peter would do the live buttons. He managed the website and paid for it. And then, I would spend the time editing it, making show media, whatever. And then less and less as because I think I was Peter had his full-time job, but it was a very 9-to-5 kind of full-time job, or odd hours because he'd work night shifts and stuff like that. Whereas I got a full-time job, and then it became difficult to adapt and have the energy to do podcasting and whatever. And so I stopped editing, but I kept tweeting. And I felt bad because I'm Michael's doing a lot of the grunt work and I'm complaining about writing some tweets. And so, but the tweets started to just not become creative anymore. They started to become a bit too matter. It was just it just feels like work now. And I remember at what point, and then, because I think, Michael would text me saying, are you tweeting? Because if I slept in or something, or if I don't do it, I'd be I'm so sorry. And I'd feel bad. And I can't remember how we got onto the topic, but then basically I said, I can't be fucked doing it. Is it okay that we just don't tweet anymore? And then it was no worries. And so basically we don't. So our social media presence has diminished dramatically. To be honest, we're not big on socials because I don't I'm using my phone, but on my phone, I reckon I don't even have the Twitter account on there. I don't have, or the X account. I don't have the Instagram. The Instagram we set up was the last thing that we set up. The YouTube account we haven't serviced in God knows how long. The Facebook page, I don't know. So occasionally the show goes up on there and that's how we communicate. We have the Discord, which I think is, a more interactive way to engage with our audience. It's almost just the Box of Neutrals app, which I like because it's just here's the episode and you guys can talk amongst yourselves and make dumb shit and whatever, which we enjoy. And I'm always I'll check every so often to see there's still people that join the group for the first time, and it's a fairly engaged niche group of people, which I like. I genuinely don't know our podcast numbers. I couldn't tell you, and I don't care because I'm not living and dying by those numbers, because I'm doing it because to be honest, I see Michael Laminato once a week. So it's, for me, I see a friend. I'm guaranteed to see a friend once a week to talk about F1. It's a bit of fun, and it's very simple. So, and that's probably why the show just won't stop immediately. I don't know. We had a meeting earlier this week actually, about what we're doing next year. So there's a couple of things that I think we're working on that's a bit more, that is going to require more effort. So, but that, that obviously comes with, where we can get support commercially and what have you. But nevertheless, we still want to do it because at its heart, I get to hang out with Michael once a week and we talk about F1, and it's very simple. It's very I don't know how long it takes Michael to edit the show, but it's very, from my understanding, and I'm happy to be corrected, Michael, if you watch this back and say it takes me 6 hours to edit your stuff ups. Of which it's funny, like if because I used to edit it and I would edit it like ferociously. Stumbles, stuff ups, whatever. I would fix. It was seamless. And then like you listen to the show now, you hear me like mid thought, and I get confused. But I don't care. It's fine.
It's authentic.
I don't mind. Yeah,
we're getting the real Rob.
But like even this year, like I was just a bit like. There's a point in the year where, not that I don't care, but it's just like, I'm just so busy with work and whatever. It's just hard to keep up, and it's hard to like make bloody Jared Waitley rhymes and whatever and all the stuff that I get excited about at the start of the year. Where like if you listen to the first show of Box and Neutrals this year, you were there. I
was there.
There was a gag. There was a literal sketch for 10 minutes. High production. Like it was
People
nuts.
stopped listening.
The premise was for the, if your audience haven't heard, was basically we took the piss out of the WTF1 exit and we announced that we were leaving, and we replaced you with like Darren Hinch and Oprah Winfrey or something stupid, and you were Darren. And it was the whole joke, and but genuinely like, and it was flattering and concerning because people were like, we're so like, I'm subscribing. I'm not listening to that to anyone else. I want Michael and Rob. This is shit, whatever. So people genuinely unsubscribed. And so it was either they listened and thought we did too good of a job fooling them that we were leaving. That they just like, nah, never again. And then we had to backtrack and go, no, actually, no, that was a joke. Sketch. That was a joke. Please come back. Sketch.
Yeah,
because
don't leave us.
Our sponsor, they've committed to 6 months, and we need to. I want to get paid. So, and again, that was just like a dumb idea that because it's good because it's not like the Beatles or any rock band that like starts to lose its way and like there's infighting and creative differences. It's just like, I want to do this. What do you reckon? Oh yeah, it's kind of funny. And like it's very simple and authentic. But like, I do get a bit bogged down in the middle of the year. But a friend of mine, who, not that he doesn't listen, but he's never actually like really said, oh, I really like your podcast. Like out of the blue, like unprompted said, oh, hey, you know what? I'm actually really enjoying your podcast at the moment. And this was in a period where I thought, I'm lazy. I'm not doing enough. I should be doing more. And I thought, my performance hasn't been good. I've been a bit shit with, and so like I've been questioning like, my own performance. And then, for a friend of mine to say, no, I'm actually like genuinely really enjoying it, or I got back into it or whatever. Sort of helps keep us going, I guess.
How do you find having a community? Because Discord is a really cool place to be engaged with fans all over the world. It's funny talking to some people who start podcasts now or YouTube channels trying to do F1 content creator things, and we both struggle with that, but also like what it needs to really take things up to the next level. We'll do social media, but I do it begrudgingly because I do have other stuff to do with my life as well. But for a lot of them, it's like, we want to get famous, as the quote. And the reality is, both you and I, and if you're watching this podcast, wherever you are, thank you. But that means that we're famous because you're watching us. We have a level of fame within the world of F1, which is really hard to sort of comprehend sometimes as we sit in our play seat and in our study talking about this kind of stuff. Do you think about that at all? Do you think about the audience and how much? I know you don't know your numbers, but you know that you've got 400 odd people in a Discord who every time I log in there, I'm mainly just like getting rid of all of the notifications because there's so many all of the time.
Yeah, no, it's flattering, and I genuinely don't envy people that are trying to make it big or to start up a podcast from the ground up. Not to mention the level of competition there is now in that space, and some do it better than others. Some are trying. Some are doing it for nefarious reasons. But
We were,
the Lakeside Drive. But like I'll give you two answers. So from my point of view, I don't care, and that's great because F1's at like exploded now. It's huge and whatever. But I think Michael and I are just so confident with each other and quote unquote the product that like it, we do it. If we had a producer, if we had more help, if we had more production, it'd be great. But I think it would lose a little bit of its authenticity because it's just a bit casual, a bit loose. But that said, we used to regularly interview people of note in F1 and we don't really do that anymore. Whether that's a good thing or not, I don't really know, but I don't really care either. So I think in the time we're in now, we're not chasing anything. So it actually makes it easier for us because we don't care. In the sense that we don't care of getting, someone's going to pick us up and we're going to make all this money and we're going to like be on Sky Sports F1 and do joke segments wearing lycra, climbing up Eau Rouge and, shit like I don't care.
No, they fired Johnny Herbert.
Yeah. So it hasn't been the same since. But so that from that point of view, I don't care. It's fine. But also it's nice that, and I quite like the fact that it's a smaller audience because it's the risk that you run with like a broader appeal. So you're gonna have an audience of, again, like Johnny Herbert, like people in Sky F1 would be like, oh, that was great, whatever, this is good content, whatever. There'd be people that would be indifferent, weirdly love it, or be like us and bag it. And so I don't think I want to get to us because I guess we don't put in, we're not a big fish. We're not a big player in the scene. So I don't think we get as much shit come our way. So it's very rare that I see or hear criticism about our show. I reckon I've heard maybe 2 or 3 genuinely in my time that I've seen. Like I don't go out looking for it either. But the first bit of negative feedback I ever saw was someone on our Facebook page commented after we released an episode. Or maybe it was when we announced we're going to the ABC. They accused us of being sellouts. You sellouts, blah, blah, blah. Like, mate, if only you knew. It was,
wow.
So someone said, it hasn't been the same since. And then I think someone else, I know people bemoan the fact that we don't have Peter on the show anymore. Now I agree because it's, it was the perfect formula because he was the person that didn't know much about F1. And to his credit, he actually gained a lot of knowledge in F1 to the point where in the midst of Bahrain having a civil war, he decided it was a good idea to still go to Bahrain. I don't know why. I respect him for it because this is a man a year earlier who was petrified of going to a Oriental restaurant because it was out of his comfort zone. And then the next year he's gone to Bahrain in the midst of civil war.
Me.
Anyway, but we don't have a Peter on the show. So to be fair, Michael and I, we're both experts as best as we can be without being F1 drivers or F1 people, as in like F1 people through the system who've worked in it or whatever. So I'm conscious to not, but this is the thing, like now I think Box of Neutrals will attract a niche audience of people that know about F1, so we don't make it general or dumb it down with the, not that people who dumb it down are doing it. It's just, we know that if you're into F1 and you're listening to us, you've chosen our show for a reason. So we kind of respect the fact that it It might be a small audience. I've heard the numbers before, and I get genuinely surprised what the numbers are. But in terms of like trends, whether they've been up and down, I genuinely don't know, and I don't care either. But the audience that we do have, I do respect the fact that they stick around and listen and seem to enjoy it. And probably really we do it for. If it's not for ourselves, we probably do it for them. And so whenever I do an episode, I'm conscious that, you know, there are people from North Carolina listening that for whatever reason stumbled up on our show and enjoyed it. It's had weird followers. We were big in the Netherlands way before Max, mind you, as well, because of the Olaf Mol connection. So we used to be pretty big over there. And then the UK was also pretty big. Then America started to become big, specifically North Carolina. For the life of me, I don't know why. But because it's niche, because it's small, I think we're less prone to criticism because I like to think we still respect our audience, and I hope they know that. So that's I like to keep it that way.
Well, you form such an important part of the landscape, honestly. I mean, I don't view us as competitors. We do share some audience members across both Discord servers, which is hilarious when that comes across. But yeah, it's just you guys are doing great things. And,
thank you. Yeah.
We love having you as kind of the bigger sibling because you've sort of forged the path. We're slightly different, but in the same way, still a podcast from Melbourne talking about Formula One. But I love that because of those two things, it's created friendships for the three of us, an Extreme E podcast, maybe other things in the future, TBC. It's cool things. It's really cool. It's like the community. It's not like that cutthroatness that it feels like Formula One is at Sky level and Fox Sports and everything else. There's actually like a genuine community now of podcasters, as well as then a community underneath that of fans.
Yeah, it's nice because it's because knowing how difficult podcasts are to make, you have to respect other people that do it. And I think as long as it's a huge cliche, and I hate to say it, but as long as you're authentic with how you do it and how you present it, there's always going to be an audience for you. So I think, I'm sure there's lots of people that want to do an F1 podcast and whatever. So it's just about, finding your voice. I hate saying that, but it's true. Like you gotta find what tickles your fancy. And I think for us, we look at the basics of an F1. We do talk about what happened in an F1 race, but then we'll, find things that I find amusing. Mike will find things that he finds amusing, and we sort of, run with that. And so, it's like you said, it's a good community of, everyone that does an F1 podcast is going to have respect in my eyes because it's hard work to do, but it's fun. Like it's a good way to because what's that thing on TikTok at the moment? It's everyone, like a lot of people just don't have that third. It's not third base, is it? I don't know. They don't have that third thing to do because it's always like people have work, family, and then like a hobby like playing, futsal on a Tuesday afternoon or something like that. Whereas for me, like doing a podcast on a Monday with Michael is my third thing. It's my third thing to do. Gets to be out of the house, basically.
Yeah.
And inside a studio with no windows.
Inside a very small studio, yeah.
Yeah. So it's fun to do. And so hopefully, if you want to if you're watching this, you want to do a podcast, you should be able to do it because it's fun and it's the right time to do it because it's, you don't have to have a radio studio. You can sit in a racing seat with a microphone in front of you on a laptop in your house and do it. So yeah, it's easy.
Well, mate, thank you for taking the time to have a chat. I won't bother asking about this F1 season or what you think F1 next year is going to be like because we both need to do season reviews of our own on our own shows. So if you want Rob's opinion on that, go listen to Box of Neutrals' season review at some point in the next couple of weeks, I'm sure.
Yes, I'm going to have a ceremonial message in a bottle at Brighton Beach, and because one of my predictions came half right. It was the soft one. It was the Logan Sargent one. But anyway,
well, no, don't forget your Daniel Ricciardo prediction or suggestion from last year of taking a sabbatical happened.
Mate,
So
Rob's the dramas. If there's anything I have a huge head wobble and ego about, it's bloody Rob's the dramas. Because I was right about Fernando Alonso going back to McLaren a second time around. I called it. I bloody well called it. And it was some other things that I've called before as well that I go, oh, just genius. But no, they're just honestly, they're wild guesses.
Yeah,
none of them are any sort of intel that I'm passing off as a wild guess. I've genuinely just gone, I think he'll go back. Or I think, no, Ricardo, you should take a year off. I reckon he'll do that. So it's just, yeah. Again, it's like me bullshitting my way through a radio interview. Sometimes I bullshit my way through the future.
That's right. Well, I would hope that you continue to do that, mate, because it's a pleasure to listen to you both, and it's great to just have you solo to talk about your story. Thank you very much for that. So let's have a Robster-dramas before we wrap this one up for 2024 on Lakeside Drive. What have you got that is exclusive to this podcast?
So you know how we start the 2024 season with the same lineup that we enjoyed at the end of 2023? It will change. Ooh. Liam Lawson in. You heard it here first.
Well, I think we all want that, because that means the promotion of our Lord and Saviour back to Red Bull. And thank God Oscar Piastri didn't stay anywhere near Alpine. Yes. Who knows, Jack?
Genuinely lovely kid, by the way, Liam Lawson. Yes. I had a little bit to do with him in his early days.
Yep.
Yeah. I think when I met him, I knew he was going to be top shit. So I'm glad that my Robster Dramas of 2017 was also proven correct. But yeah, he's a good kid, so he deserves it 100%.
Awesome. Well, mate, thank you again for joining us. I can't wait to see how you guys grow next year and doing more random things, and I'm looking forward to your end of year season review podcast very soon.
Cool. Until next week, I've been Neil Mitchell. Thanks for watching.
3AW is Formula
Ultimate
1.
Frisbee.
Yeah.